and certain medical concerns that you have to monitor. Not all of the children are born with heart conditions that need to be monitored and so on. So they're very unique patients. So I think that an awareness, I think, would be the first place to start. And I think that, again, if moms and families have that balanced all of the knowledge together, then we trust that they will make a more informed decision.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, if a couple is faced with a decision like this, are there any opportunities for them to maybe meet with a family who has a child with Down syndrome, or how would they go about getting more information?
Well, we have a pilot parent program, therefore, with different ethnic backgrounds, because, again, not everybody, English is not necessarily their first language, especially in Toronto. So we do have, I think, that the best support for a family who is, first of all, making a decision, or who has made the decision, and now maybe in some cases it might be a surprise, so it may not have known in advance, that the best kind of support they can get is from a peer family who, like myself and many of our other members, can talk about something from having a child with Down syndrome, because people want to know the real deal. I don't think you can speak about something that you have not experienced, because it has no validity.
Yeah.
So I think that the best connector is parent to parent, so they can ask, whether even culturally sensitive, okay, so that's important, so that they can maybe share. We have them maybe come over together and have a meal. We can see the child who has Down syndrome with the host family. So I think it's very important that they also know through us that we are here, and we are here to support them either in their decision or to support them in the aftermath of their decision.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a great program.
Well, thank you.
And so I'm wondering, with kind of the onset of these new procedures, screening and diagnosis, have we seen any changes in the number of people in Canada with Down syndrome?
Well, I think that we are looking at, we haven't had any recent statistics, but I am just kind of going because I think that Canadian statistics generally reflect American. We're not that different. And if these numbers in the United States are, as they are, I think that basically if we translate that to Canada, I'm just thinking, well, in 10 or 15 years, will there be nobody who has gotten or who has been able to experience the light of all of our kids? Because I experience it, as you have seen today in this program, and it's a special joy, it's a special talent, it's a special gift that they bring to this world. The gifts that they bring are non-judgment, full embracement of the person, black, white, pink, purple, gay, lesbian, straight. They just want to be friends. And I thought, wow, if the world was filled with and run by persons with Down syndrome, what a wonderful world it would be. So I'm very, very focused on the fact that I feel kind of mortally wounded by the fact that there's so much joy that's not being allowed to be able to lighten up this world. And we of course speak out on that and support information and so on. So again, it's not to decide for the mom or the family, okay, whether or not they decide to keep their pregnancy or not. As I said earlier, that's a traumatic experience. There's all sorts of variables that are involved in that. I just want them to know that there is joy to having a child with Down syndrome, and that it's not all negative. Because like I said, I speak from experience, and I deal with hundreds of parents, and I speak to hundreds of people around the world, and that's my message, is that they bring joy to the world, and they have a talent, and they have a skill. So anytime we find a particular group that seems to be marginalized and maybe seen as some sort of, as I said, a deficit group, I think that that's a problem with our society that we need to address.
So, as I mentioned before, I also have a sister with Down syndrome.
Lucky you.
And my mother has often raised concerns about these new procedures and the implications that they'll have for the community of people already living with Down syndrome. So if there's less people being born with Down syndrome, maybe services provided will decrease. There will be less available. I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
Well, I think that it's like if we have a group that seems to be becoming smaller and smaller, then when you look at government programs, they look at a population that seems to be decreasing, and I therefore think that they would look at their allotment of resources in terms of needs and say, well, there's only 2 or 3% of the population, and therefore, more service becomes reduced or even removed, and that would, I think, add more burden on the families who are dealing with all sorts of life's concerns, putting food on the table and educating their kids and so on and so forth. So I think that the streamlining, I call it like the streamlining, where we're trying to almost design the perfect specimen, if you will, of a human being. I see that as problematic. In any group. I mean, our history has looked at where we've tried to get the people who don't belong, who don't fit in because they are not in the dominant cultures, in their view, to be the proper type of created human being. I think that that's a real problem for me. I think that our community, in terms of Down syndrome, when you look at Canada, the population of, let's say, 35 to 40 million, and we have maybe 35,000, and their families and so on, but really very, very small drop in the population ocean of Canada. So I think that we have to look at medical technology, and we have to always look at it through an ethical lens, not just the fact that, well, everybody has a right to this, that, and the other. Okay, but again, what are the ethical consequences? Because certainly doctors take the Hippocratic Oath to preserve life at all costs. I mean, that's the fundamental. Also, I think that we need to look at the new technology in terms of medical usage, and I think we really need to look at it and remember, how is this impacting all of society, including the very smallest of minority groups, such as persons with Down syndrome.
So to me, it seems almost like a cycle where maybe new parents faced with a decision like this, because there's already maybe less infants being born with Down syndrome, maybe families are getting less exposure out in the community, out in society. It seems almost like a cycle that's just spiraling. What do you think about that? How do you think that's going to kind of stop that cycle?
Well, I mean, I think that minority groups have always depended on their message getting out when people roll up their sleeves, ordinary grassroots folks, in our case, parents, who ensure that they ask for nothing special for their kids. They just ask for equity in the treatment of their kids and of their young people. And to me, people sometimes confuse equality with equity. Equality is giving everybody the same thing. I like to look at equity as being what we're seeking for our community, and that is that they receive what they need to be on a level playing field with able-bodied persons. We're not asking for special things, but for example, in the physically disabled, and we have some kids who have got dual diagnosis, they have Down syndrome and they also have a physical disability, well, they need wheelchairs to move forward. To me, that's not something, they just have a different mobility method. So I would see that is something that is part of society that doesn't give them a special, it just enables them to do what people who can walk do.
Yeah.
But I think that advocacy always is something that comes from the heart in our community. So, no matter how big or how small, we as parents and we as an organization, together with the national organization for sure, need to always be visible. We always need to be, for example, outreaching. So maybe we work with our teachers in the schools and we see, okay, what is it that can help our kids to shine, whether it's academically, whether it's in the spring concert, whether it's in the choir. How do we demonstrate that we want a country that promotes equity for all by having them front and center, involved just like every other person or every other kid? It goes for employment, it goes for recreation, it goes for education.